Nice While It Lasted is the finale of Bojack Horseman. In my opinion, the best episode of the show, and the title of the scene that gives us our thematic thesis statement. The episode opens with a sequence of gags questioning if Bojack is really alive before showing us what happened, and that he's alive and in jail for, well, really a culmination of everything. The first words he says in the episode are,
"Look, nothing's easy, but I wouldn't be talking to you now if I didn't believe that it wasn't too late for us."
And Bojack definitively answers the question the show opens with at the end of the first season that's been hanging over our heads like a sort of Damocles sword as we go through all of the events of the show.
I guess my question is, do you think it's too late for me?
What?
Bojack sought validation that it wasn't too late for him from Diane, the person who understood him best. But now, he confidently states his own opinion, validating it for himself. He's actually performing in a play that he's putting on in the prison, signaling his continued interest in creation and in helping others, one of his answers in the best part, worst part game show from last episode. As he later tells Princess Carolyn, the play is Hedda Gabler by, you guessed it, Henrik Ibsen. Its claim to fame is that it's the female version of Hamlet, and one of the early plays dealing with mental health and taking control of your own life. Fitting. But, in the same line to Princess Carolyn, Bojack gives us a parallelism to his mother's repeated, it's not Ibsen, something he's deeply internalized. It's literally the first scene of the show.
I think the show's actually pretty solid for what it is. It's not Ibsen, sure, but...
And he now says, it's not Strindberg. It's pretty subtle, but I very much enjoy the detailing, showcasing his escape here from his mother's standards he's always tried to live up to, replacing them instead with his own. I love that he gives this initial self-affirmation in his resolution episode framed within the art his mother found most meaningful. He turned something she used to dismiss his own work into a tool of understanding her and affirming himself through it. I think this is a necessary, vital even, component of Bojack's development, and probably the most significant motif in the show in how it affects the key dynamic of Beatrice and Bojack. Mr. Peanut Butter picks up Bojack from jail as he was granted leave to attend Princess Carolyn's wedding to Judah. Again, how would he know that if he was dead? Mr. Peanut Butter gives us resolution to his character as he acknowledges, explicitly, his conflict with women and his dependency. It's a nice cap to a good for what it is arc. For being the fifth best character in the show, not bad. He also explicitly says he'll always be friends with Bojack, and I believe that to be true. They visit the planetarium where we get a funny cap to the Stolen D plotline, giving us our send-off to the show's timeline in Hollywood. But more importantly, visiting the planetarium, which before drove Bojack out of town simply by driving by, it now fills him with dread, as it should, but it doesn't send him spiraling. It's a subtle nod to his acceptance and processing of Sarah Lynn's death. It's a fitting and logical step forward emotionally after watching his reckoning with it during her performance in the last episode, and how that performance and the episode being in his head demonstrated understanding of her and their relationship. I appreciate that we see necessary resolution to two of the most meaningful specters still haunting Bojack despite his confrontation of them in The View from Halfway Down, that we see the growth crafted in the episode's later sections applied to them. But I think it's very important that it's as subtle as it is, shown through the culmination of the recurring Ibsen motif and his reaction to the planetarium. The last two episodes create a clear contrast as we flow from death to life, and it's good for the tone of the episode to maintain the living relationships at the forefront of Bojack's actions. At the wedding, Bojack is anxious and alone, and along comes Todd. He takes Bojack out to just be nice to him, and they watch the fireworks on the beach. This is, in my opinion, the thematic point of the show. This is the point of Bojack's character and what this analysis has led up to and meant to substantiate. They discuss Bojack's current situation, and vitally, we liken the situation to his last successful change with rehab over the course of Season 6, Part 1, revisiting the concern of a potential relapse. What happens if Bojack fucks up again? And Todd tells him, then you'll get sober again. Todd gives us an often questioned but extremely fitting for the show metaphor, which serves as our answer, if there is one. It's a bit of a wacky cap-off to such a dark show with a metaphor about the hokey pokey, but if you've been watching the show, it completely makes sense. The show has always been a silly sitcom deconstruction as a vehicle to explore almost unapproachably dark subjects. The character who best balances comic relief and sage-like wisdom, delivering our meaning in this show specifically in the form he does, is nothing short of a perfect fit. He describes the place he's at in life with his relationship with his mom, mirroring Bojack's relationship with himself and his own progress. He never thought he'd get to this point, but he has. In questioning change as an idea, he brings up the hokey pokey, saying everyone misses the point. The song does not go, you do the hokey pokey, and that's what it's all about. It goes, you do the hokey pokey, and you turn yourself around, and that's what it's all about.
You turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
That's what the show is. That's what Bojack character amounts to. This is the application of what the phone call with Diane meant, and even the later conversation with her in this episode serves as an undercurrent to support this idea. The development towards understanding and appreciating life and shared love with others is reason for change. But specifically, it is the pursuit of change to be better for yourself and to benefit your shared love with the people around you. The continual pursuit of change. It's the two sides of the coin that is Bojack's thematic focus, which I mentioned last episode, blending together. Bojack already stated that he knows it's not too late for him, and here it clearly isn't, as our whole show has been a cycle of ever-shortening periods of destruction and healing. We now see a pretty healthy, self-assured Bojack, knowing that he can be who he wants to be, and he'll never stop trying. Even as he points out that that's probably not what the song meant, it's more what he gets out of the art than what was put into it, and he accepts Todd's interpretation. It's also very funny that Todd talks about how maybe art doesn't need a point, and that's why it's called art, as he gives us the point of our show. The scene itself is given massive emphasis as Todd states the title of our finale just after he stated the point of our show. Bojack's hope, his acceptance that there is not one true path to meaning and that the potential for happiness is what makes life meaningful, and that he's changed and he'll always pursue that change as it's what's in his heart. The pursuit of change itself is as meaningful and worthwhile, and it always will be. The character who has most put his foot down and held Bojack accountable in the later seasons now stands with him, confident that he will be better. It seems like he can see this self-loathing, destructiveness, and performative guilt being replaced with the new Bojack's repentance, his humility, his calm acceptance. He's a Bojack who can even tolerate honeydew, truly a new man. The pursuit of change all comes to a head here, and he stands with Todd looking out on a nice night. It was nice while it lasted. Next up is Princess Carolyn. She's a source of guilt for Bojack. She's one of his best friends. She's his weird mother-lover hybrid. But here he's able to accept that he didn't take the best years of her life from her. They're both happy to have had the times together they have, and she's found her own happiness now, and it was never his responsibility. He finds further self-forgiveness and then launches into a made-up scenario of saving her wedding through reassuring her. He's doing this, I think, not for selfish reasons, wanting to be thanked, but out of gratitude for her. Princess Carolyn states what are clearly completely truthful reservations she has about the marriage, that she'll lose a part of herself in relying too much on another, which makes total sense in a character arc largely rooted in independence and agency as a woman. Bojack assures her in, contrary to the dinner discussion of last episode and much of the conflict of season 3, that even if she doesn't find ultimate happiness that's everlasting, that she's happy now and she can cherish that. He validates her decision not as himself, but through her own will, saying that she knew deep down that she wanted this, and she should trust herself as he does. After all, as he says, she's the smartest woman he knows. It's a really good answer to a really legitimate conflict. I also deeply enjoy the framing of it, in that he presents this as a two-sided issue. His response doesn't run away from conflict. It accepts it and overcomes it without dismissal. Their dance becomes more intimate, and they hug after establishing that they will continue to have a relationship going forward, but not in the same way. The show's final scene features Bojack's last ever conversation with Diane. They reflect on what their relationship has meant, where they'll be going, and the value in ultimately temporary relationships. Bojack Horseman is essentially the time period of these two knowing each other. Diane makes it clear that she does not think they should have a relationship going forward. Bojack accepts this and says she does not owe him anything. They both express gratitude for the help they've given each other, an apology for the pain they've caused each other. The scene evokes the message of change as Diane speaks about how different she is. She affirms that change isn't a complete overhaul of a person, nor is it some pursuit of infinite, impenetrable happiness. It's simply being better in the pursuit of continuing to do so. Mirroring the phone call in last episode when it's all about to end, Bojack seeks one last little conversation with her. The atmosphere of this scene mimics their last conversation. The mood and themes coincide. They are both positioned as what will be the last conversation, and seek validation in their shared love in a distinct period of time despite an impending end. The added intrigue, what makes this scene valuable beyond simply reiteration, comes in the repositioning of death and the now tangible reality of Diane, her real self rather than she who exists in Bojack's mind. Previously, the statement was confined to being a validation of meaningful experience despite death's eventual termination of it. But here, the end is not an unknowable, impenetrable concept. It's simply the motion of people over time. The contrast of the two conversations is the device that is born, life's a bitch, and then you keep living. It's also a metatextual commentary in that Bojack and Diane's relationship and its timeline is the show that we're watching. We, the viewer, are also being sort of broken up with here. And in such, the show is validating its own place to us, despite its end, in fitting contrast to the seemingly endless sitcoms it deconstructs. Bojack Horseman, the show, is over, but our time with it and our continued memory and internal experience with it is endlessly meaningful. Or at least, it has been for me, if you couldn't tell by me writing a multi-hour long video essay on it. Bojack tells her a somewhat funny story, and the two stare off into the night, appreciating their journey together as the show fades out. The sense of appreciation also morphs in the sequence compared to the phone call. Here, Diane is a real person with real conflict. The transition mirrors the repeated conflict with change taking place in rehab where there is no real conflict. All is sanitized and easy. It does not pose the dangers in actual application of the premise in the real world, with gaps of understanding and inherent conflict that exist between us. In this scene, Diane poses understanding and apology to Bojack, but she also rebukes him for putting her in a traumatic situation he did with his phone call, and implies they'll probably never speak again. She incites the end of what is implied to be his most meaningful extant relationship, yet he is still able to appreciate the moment.
It's a nice night, huh?
Yeah. This is nice.
I use the term application to mean the additional and usually deeper conflict inherent to enacting changes a character has come to understand through the developments in the story, and that's largely been what this episode is. We open with a validation of the show's core question in jail before moving towards applications of its answer to our core conflicts. The Todd scene is an understood grounding of the change question, that Bojack truly knows the value of embracing the change he's made and never failing to strive in the continual pursuit of change as an infinite, evolving process, that the pursuit itself is valuable. There are no good people or bad people. We're all just people, and all we can do is try to do more good stuff and less bad stuff. From the beginning, that's been our viewpoint. Bojack isn't an interminably bad person, and he can change. And he has. The Diane scene is an application of the premise created in the end of The View from Halfway Down, serving as our finale of the other side of our coin, the question of meaning. Faced with the immediate death, Bojack is able to appreciate a moment with an idealized version of Diane in his head. But now, even when faced with the grimy reality with her, his relationship with her, his internal realizations of meaning are still able to validate love in his time shared with her on a nice night, despite the pain of an encroaching end. The two scenes build off each other, removed from sequence in a sort of yin-yang of the show's thematic scope, and ultimately just make each other stronger in their coalescence of the point of our show. It's a beautiful end to a beautiful show that I've loved for many years now. It's had a profound effect on my view of morality in general, and it all runs through Bojack, one of my favorite characters in fiction, and in my opinion, the greatest achievement in Western television. I hope you found value in the show as I have. I hope you've enjoyed listening to my rambling on about it, and maybe even learned something new. If you have listened, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I really enjoyed writing about Bojack, and I hope I'll get through more analyses of characters I love done in the future. At the moment, I'm leaning towards turning to manga, doing a reread of Vagabond, and covering Masashi Miyamoto in my next extensive analysis, while writing some shorter single video analyses in between. Let me know if you think of this idea. But anyways, much love and appreciation to all who have followed my Bojack analysis, and see you next time.